If you have kids or are going to have kids and you're moving to the Boise area, you're probably going to want to know what it's like for them to grow up here. I've lived here my entire life, so I grew up in the Boise area and I have 4 siblings that have also been raised here. So I have some experience. I'm going to talk about my personal experiences with growing up in the Treasure Valley, as well as some of the experiences I have with a lot of my younger siblings to hopefully give you a better idea of what it will be like for your kids and what it's going to be like raising a family in the Treasure Valley. My name is Brady Fagel. I am a local realtor and I love helping people relocate to the Boise area, whether it's in a week or it's in a year. I'd love to answer any of your questions and help you prepare for that relocation and that move. My number's up on the screen, so if you want to shoot me a text or a call, or if you want to schedule a call with me and I can give you a call at whatever time works best for you, that link is in the description. But let's get back into the video and see what Boise's like growing up here. Now, a lot of my memories start when I was 5, 6, 7, once I started getting into elementary school. But the few memories I do have when I was a little kid was living in Boise and having access to the Boise River. I remember going crawdad fishing and putting out a can of tuna in the river and having family, and we'd sit and wait and catch crawdads. I remember fishing in some of the ponds that a lot of Boise has to offer, and picking blackberries and raspberries and asparagus and some of the farmland in the valley. That's my major memories from when I was really young and I lived in Boise. I moved to Meridian and I went to Ponderosa Elementary School, and then I went to Sawtooth Middle School, and for a short stint I went to Compass Public Charter School, and then I went to Rocky Mountain High School. My siblings, they grew up in Nampa, so they went to Nampa schools. They went to a private Catholic school there, and then my oldest brother, he goes to Bishop Kelly High School, which was one of the top high schools in the valley. My memory of the school system is there was never any major issues. The kids were always good. There wasn't a ton of fights, not any drugs, not any of the things that you worry about when you have kids and them growing up in the school system. One thing I remember is that it was overcrowded, which I know now it's grown even more, and because that was 20 years ago. So now it's grown a lot more, and the overcrowding, the number of students per every teacher is even worse. And I even remember that as a kid, having tons of kids and not having that one-on-one access to your teacher. The other thing I do remember as a kid is I remember even noticing that the public schools in Idaho, and even though Meridian has some of the best public schools, I remember it being less challenging because I went to Compass Charter my 6th grade year, and I remember it being a lot more challenging, a lot more rigorous, and learning a lot more, actually being challenged. And then I went back to the public schools and I went back to not being as challenged. So I do know that if you do want a higher education, Compass is a really good option. As you will see, it is one of the top rated elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools in the entire state. There's also a lot of private schools. You have Challenger, you have the Coal Valley Christian, you have Ambrose. So there's options outside of just the public schools, Renaissance High School. And that's one thing I do remember. The high school I went to, it was a really big high school. That's one thing in Meridian is if you're coming from California, it's probably not as big of a deal, but I remember that I graduated with 550 and my freshman class was 1,000 kids. So there was almost 4,000 students at Rocky when I was there. And I know that's similar to how it is now, is you have a lot of students at the high schools. They're really big high schools. They're bigger than some colleges. And I do remember seeing people at graduation night that I had never seen my entire 4 years because of the size. But again, in high school, same thing, no major issues. I had really good friend groups. The sports, which I'll talk about later, was really good. And I really enjoyed high school and growing up in the valley when it comes to the school systems. Another thing, because if you're moving from another state, I remember people moving from other states even back then, and it was always very welcoming, at least in my friend groups and people that I hung out with, is people who relocated here. The kids were welcomed. We're always excited to get the new student and welcome them into the friend group, but I know that's my experience. So when it comes to sports, growing up as a young kid, there's no shortage of options. I played Y-ball, which is basketball league here. It's a public Y-ball basketball league. I had flag football. There was Optimus football, and there was tons of options. There's no shortage of sports growing up as a kid here. My siblings the same way. There's no shortage of leagues. They're always in soccer. They're always in basketball or football. And whether you're in Meridian, Nampa, Boise, You always have an option no matter where you live. If you have those younger kids and you just want to get them into the non-competitive public leagues. When you get a little bit older, or if you want to get into the competitive leagues, there's no shortage of that either. Growing up, I played competitive soccer, I played competitive basketball and travel. All of that is here in the Valley. You have Hoop Dreams, which is a popular travel basketball association that has a ton of teams at every age range. You have Select, you have Flight. There's a lot of things to do when it comes to travel, soccer. Every single sport in Boise is going to have that, and I had that growing up, as well as all of my siblings. When you get into the school system and sports in the schools in the Valley, the top rated schools, they're going to be in West Ada. It's going to be your Rocky Mountain High School, your Owyhee High School, Mountain View, Eagle. A lot of those top high schools are where the sports are going to be at a little bit higher levels. So living in and around Meridian and Eagle, if you have kids and you want them to be at some of the top high schools for sports, that's where it's going to be. When you get into Nampa, Caldwell, and Boise can vary from year to year, but Meridian's definitely where the heart of a lot of the sports are. Now, things to do growing up as a kid here, there's definitely no shortage. I remember as a kid going to the water park. We have Roaring Springs Water Park, and then right next to it is Wahoo's, but it used to be called Boondocks as a kid. I remember being excited to get the season pass and being able to go there every day or every other day if I had friends I could carpool with. That was a really exciting thing as a kid, is having that as an option. Now we have Top Golf, there's tons of parks. There was never a shortage of things, and a nice thing was the subdivisions that we lived in. A lot of the subdivisions in Meridian especially, there was always kids outside. There's always parks in the neighborhoods. There's pools. A lot of subdivisions have pools, so it was always nice when you had friends that lived in a neighborhood that had those pools, and in the summer you could go spend time at the pool and hang out with friends. Once you get a little bit older as a kid, another thing that I love to do is fishing, and there's a lot of opportunity there. A lot of subdivisions also have private ponds, especially when you get out into Eagle. There's private bass fishing in a lot of those neighborhoods, and growing up I had friends that lived in those neighborhoods, and we'd go out at lunch and fish after school and fish on the weekends. And it was really fun to be able to have that just right within the valley and have a 5-minute drive to be able to do that every day. There's also public options. You have the Boise River, so if you want to fish and hang out on the river, there's also public ponds in Star and in Boise. And that was really cool growing up, if you are into the outdoors, is being able to do those things. As a kid too, there was the Eagle Canyon. There's always things to do in the foothills, or going to Lucky Peak. If you have friends that had boats, we could go jet skiing and tubing on Lucky Peak just outside of Boise, or you could float the Boise River in the summer. So there's definitely not a shortage. And I remember this as a kid, is in the summer, you always had things to do. If you weren't in sports, you had the Boise River, you had Lucky Peak, you had the mountains, you could go up to McCall. And it's really awesome to have access to that as a kid, especially as you get into high school and you have a little bit more freedom. With my siblings, it's the same way. So they have the same things. They're doing the same things. Even now, they have a little bit more options. I know even in and around Rocky, there's more restaurants. There's more things to do. We have Top Golf now, like I mentioned, and that we have the Village, and there's even new parks. So they have even more things to do than I did when I grew up in Meridian. But overall, growing up here, I loved Meridian. I loved Boise. And I would not hesitate to raise my children here. And I've seen it with my siblings as well. You can tell even the school systems, their friends, the people you know here, your kids grow up in a good environment, especially in the subdivisions that Meridian and Eagle and Boise, everything offers. The subdivisions are really family friendly, and it's awesome to have that as an opportunity to have those pools and parks. So that's just my experience growing up in Boise. I loved it here. My parents love it here. My siblings love it here. And a lot of the people that I know now who are growing up and raising children here, it's a really good environment. And I know that's why a lot of people move here, is because they want it family friendly. They want a good place to raise their kids. And Boise is definitely that.